So, over the weekend, or last week I should say, I did the double review on the last two episodes of Dark Side of the Ring. Which were on Daphne and Muhammad Hassan. And last year, after I did the reviews, if you will, on the episodes, or at least on the final episodes, I did a video because those at Dark Side of the Ring on their social media account were asking people what would we like to see in the upcoming season. And for me, I gave my thoughts, on who I think honestly they should cover. And I still stick, if you will, I still stick to some of those. And believe me when I say that I feel that the reason they should go down the path of looking up these people, these individuals who are still with us or have passed on but have interesting, potential backstories and maybe some dark, portions of it that would fit right in with Dark Side of the Ring. The reason I keep kind of like hinting at them, or at least suggesting them as a possibility, is because of what they contributed to the business themselves. And one of the names I went with, of course, I'm going to start out with here, is beautiful Bobby Eaton. I talked about this previously, but I feel he has such an interesting story behind the scenes and everything, as well as what he did in the ring, that I feel doing a Dark Side of the Ring episode on Beautiful Bobby would be perfect. You already have a talking head, for a majority of Dark Side's run and all that. You have Jim Cornette. I'm trying to find the right word to say, you have Jim Cornette as a talking head for, like I said, a majority of the run of the show so far, and I think having him, be like a main focal point, as a talking head in this episode, I think would be great. I think, getting Stan Lee, if you can get Stan Lee, would be not Stan Lee, but Stan Lane, I should say. Stan Lee's, guy that runs Marvel Comics, my bad. But Stan Lane, if you can get Stan Lane, to come up and, talk about Bobby and all that, because he was his partner, for a majority of the Midnight Express's run. That would be great. If you could get Dennis Corday, if he's still alive, you can get him. That would be great too. So, to me, Bobby Eaton, I believe, is a perfect choice to do a Dark Side of the Ring episode on, but not just, based on who you could get potentially to talk about him, but you also could get people like Tom Pritchard, who associated with him when he was like a honorary member of the Heavenly Bodies and Smoky Mountain and all that. And you can also get people that have been in the ring with him, like you get maybe a Scott Steiner and a Rick Steiner, because of the Steiners taking on the Midnight Express on several occasions. You could get Steve Kern, who is part of the Fantastics, I think, with Tommy Fulton, or was it Bobby Fulton or Tommy? I can't remember. It's one of them. No, he was partners with, he was Stan Kern, who was Skinner, I should say. Again, I'm getting a little tongue tied and everything doing this video, because you know how my channel is. Most times I will try to do a video that's unscripted and just me talking and thinking off the top of my head as I'm filming it, what I feel what my thoughts are, I should say, and how I feel about them. And to me, like I said, you get Steve Kern, who fought against the Midnight Express as part of the Fabulous Ones. You can get the Bobby Fulton, I think, as well as I don't know if Tommy Rogers or Bobby Fulton is still alive. If one of them is, and get one of them to talk about their times with Bobby Eaton as part as part of that rivalry. Of course, get Robert Gibson and Robert Gibson and I can't even think of the guy's name right now. I know his partner. You get Robert Gibson and God, I can't even. You gotta look it up, guys. Rock and Roll Express. The Rock and Roll Express. Ricky Morton, that's who it is. Ricky Morton. I don't know why that name slipped on me. He's been still wrestling even with his son. So yeah, Robert Gibson, Ricky Morton, you can get them as well. Get Mick Foley. I think he's had interactions with Bobby. So on and so forth. You can get a lot of people, even Bobby's family, involved with this. And again, you could get a lot of stories, based, on how he was outside of the ring as well as in the ring and in the locker room and stuff. And I think that would be a great Dark Side of the Ring episode, in my opinion. I still think you need to also do an episode on Kamala, Jim Harris. Do an episode on him based on what he went through. So I think Kamala, you got to do one on him because you look at his history on how he started in the wrestling business. How he went from Big Jim Harris, I think that's what his name was, to Kamala being brought in by Jerry Lawler and all that into Memphis Wrestling. You could maybe potentially get Jerry Lawler to talk about it and all that. That would be a big get, if you will. I think you could also get you can get Doug Gilbert maybe and Tommy Rich, if you will, who worked in the Memphis area. Jim Cornette. You could probably get Harvey Wibbleman, downtown Bruno, who worked with him as well, and even maybe Steve Lombardi, who was at times portrayed as Kimchi. So you can get them as well, maybe to talk about Kamala's run in wrestling, not just in WWE, but like WCW, brief run there, as well as his time in his time in USWA when he was there, but mostly in Memphis, like with CWA, and so on. As well as you can even get people to talk about his time. I think you can still get I think Kevin Von Erich would definitely give you some information about him in World Class, because he spent a lot of time in World Class. So Kamala, I think, would be another great one to go with. Another one that I talked about is, they talked about the original Sheik this year. I think you need to go with the one that took inspiration name-wise from the Sheik, and that's the Iron Sheik. You need to go with the Iron Sheik, I believe, as well. And you can get a lot of talking heads for that one. Some you may not be able to get, but there are some that worked with Iron Sheik in WWE and for his brief run in NWA, WCW, and all that. You can get them, and I guarantee you would definitely get a whole peripheral of stories coming out of that, of what he was outside of the ring, in the ring, how serious he took his character and all that, in kayfabe and such. So I definitely feel like the Iron Sheik is another one that they should definitely dedicate an episode to in the near future. So to me, the first three I see here, Eaton, Kamala, and Iron Sheik, I definitely feel are good ones. I think another one that they should look into, I didn't mention this in the original, but I'll mention it here. I think they should do one on Louis Spicolli. Louis Spicolli. I think he would be a great, talking point based on what he's been through, out, behind the scenes and on camera and everything. And I think a lot of people would love to see that. I think it's one of the episodes fans want to see. So doing one on Louis Spicolli would be great. And you can get in contact with some people that worked with Louis, not just in ECW and WWE, but in WCW as well. So you would definitely have plenty of talking heads to go around when it comes to Louis Spicolli. I mean, you can get Tommy Dreamer, because Dreamer, one of his finishes is the Spicolli driver. So you can get him, you can get Rob Van Dam maybe, and so on. And you can get Little Greedo, and everything. So I think you could definitely get the right amount of people from all the places Louis been in, including even AAA, where he was known as Madonna's boyfriend. I think you could do that, and I think it would work very, very well. Another one I think they could do one on is, and he's no longer with us either, I think would be Giant Haystacks, who was known as Loch Ness in WCW and during his brief run. You could do something on him and his run in the UK, how he became a big star there, and how that gained the attraction of, WCW and Eric Bischoff to bring him in. You can get Eric Bischoff to talk about that. I think if you could, you get Jimmy Hart, because Jimmy Hart briefly managed him there. You can get people like Alex Wright and Scotty Riggs, maybe Marcus Bagwell, to talk about this guy and how, nobody wanted to be in the ring with him because he smelled and stuff. And then, of course, what took his life later on. And everything. So I think Giant Haystacks, Loch Ness would be a good one. I really think that would be a good one, if you will. Another one I think that would be interesting, in my opinion. I think another one that would be interesting, in my opinion. You have to because I think they need to have an episode like this once in a while. To me, the best one you should go with, in my opinion, when it comes to Dark Side and all that, you got to do one on Raven. You got to do one on Scott Levy, Scotty Flamingo, Raven. Do one on him. You still have him around, thank the Lord. But do one on Raven, and I guarantee you that's going to get people talking. Because not only can you get Raven himself, but you can also talk with like the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, and so on and so forth. And in a way, you can help promote this documentary he did as well. At least he's in the process of doing. You could do that as well. You can get Shane Douglas to talk with and all that. Tom Gordon, or Todd Gordon, I should say. So you can get a lot of people to communicate with when it comes to, Raven and his time in ECW, WCW, WWE. You can touch upon his different personas, in WWE and WCW, as well as GWF, Global Wrestling Federation. So you could do all that, and I think it would work tremendously. I think you'd have a great episode on your hands there. But, yeah, that's really just some of them I think, you could touch upon. As well, I think if you want to do a woman's episode, I think unfortunately the most darkest one you could do is would be Alyssa Masano, if you will. Do one on her. It would be very dark, but it's one of those kind of episodes that I think they would have to look into doing, and I think people would be happy that they did it. But to me, honestly, that I believe Alyssa Masano would be, Ashley Masano, not Alyssa, what am I calling Alyssa? Ashley Masano would be a good one to do as well, even though that'd be very dark and sad to watch and cover. But I think Ashley Masano would be a good one to do as well. So to me, if you want to do a woman's episode, Ashley Masano would be a good one. I think another one that they could potentially do and everything, because you could probably get to talking to her about it. If you don't want to do Ashley, I think one that they could do is Wendy Richter. I know people might say, well, Wendy doesn't have anything dark or anything to talk about. Well, you don't know that. I mean, Wendy did have a falling out with WWE. Remember that. She did have a falling out when Vince screwed her in the original screw job. So you could do Wendy Richter. You can do an episode on Wendy Richter. And I think that would be interesting, because you can find out things about her that you didn't know about, like how she did get. Well, we know how she got into the business, but still, it's like, you can find out things about her that people don't really, or that she and nor anybody else will rarely talk about, and everything. Like some, like she had incidences and behind the scenes, like any, politicalness going on here and there. If she was ever tempted to go to NWA, WCW. You could talk about those kind of things, and I think you would have an interesting episode right there as well. And I think promotion-wise, because I feel like they need to, if they don't do another Tales from the Territories season, I think if you want to do one that's more, to me, more related to Dark Side, I think there's several options you can go with. And everything. But I think, honestly, this to me would be an interesting one, and all that. I know they can't get they could get the footage and all that as best they can. But I would go with, because Vice already did something on WCW and everything, so that's out of the running. But I would go. Man, it's just so hard to think about what you could go with here and everything promotion-wise. But I think, honestly, I would go with SWS, Super World Sports Wrestling, which was a Japanese promotion. It partnered with WWE. So I would go with SWS, go from there and do an episode on that one, because I'm sure a lot of people want to know exactly what happened that caused that Japan promotion to go under and everything when it did. So to me, I think SWS would be a great promotion, a great episode to do on a promotion. So in my opinion, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Louis Spicolli, Iron Sheik, Raven, Wendy Richter, or Ashley Masano if you want to do her, And SWS, in my opinion, would be great Dark Side of the Ring episodes to look into for season 7 and beyond. But let me know what your thoughts are. Which ones do you think that I've mentioned here you feel that could be given the Dark Side of the Ring treatment and all that? And what other ones do you think should be looked into as well that I didn't mention and all that? Let me know down below in the comment section as well as in the live chat during the premiere if you haven't already. Do me all a favor, guys. Like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and until next time, guys, also click on the links in the description to help me out elsewhere outside of YouTube. And until next time, guys, I will talk to you all later. God bless. Take care.